So this is syntactic analysis, and we're looking at syntax specifically. And these acronyms, there's also two that are from the discourse field, but they'll be useful to actually to make a really close syntactic analysis of an analytical commentary and develop that skill, because regardless of what text type you're looking at, syntax will always be an element and it's something you can speak to. So your job basically is you're going to create a cheat sheet of Metalanguage. Some of it can be acronymized because it's a big long list of things that all string together, and some of it can't. So these videos will cover those things that you can actually use, and at least at the beginning you'll be wanting to use these acronyms to help you revise, help you to recall these things. The goal is that in the exam you won't be using these necessarily or need to rely on them, but sort of that it's kind of like training wheels, and that it gives you something to hang your knowledge off and to help you recall it later on. So as you're using your retrieval practice to memorize these things and their meanings, they might be useful for that. Due to the limited space of each slide, my definitions aren't as detailed as yours might like to be, so just keep that in mind and always be using the textbook to make sure, because that's the definitions that are sort of accepted for this course. So you're going to develop your own table in this respect. I've done the first three for you to get you started, but your job is to, for each element of the acronym, write a definition, a function, and then if you can find an example, the more real world, the better, because then any real world examples you use that you think are really good, you can then prepare for your expository essay. Section C. So first, SVO is of course subject, verb, object. That's pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to define it. Okay, so we've got NECS, which is nominalisation, ellipses, coordination, and subordination. So again, all syntactical things. Nominalisation, basically you're replacing a verb with a noun, used very commonly in essay writing. If you're in mainstream English, that'd be something that you'd be working on to develop your passive voice and to sort of increase the complexity of it by making sort of agentless passive voice in your sentences. Ellipses is of course just removing things that are unnecessary. Coordination is sentence clauses like that. Subordination is like that. So one's the main, one is the subordinate. Then we've got SOCA, subject, object, complement, adverbial. So subject's the main thing, object is the thing that receives the thing, complement gives a bit of additional information, and an adverbial adds meaning to the verb. So just little, this sort of, you could also maybe use predicate as well, but just when you're writing about syntax, it's easier to say the subject of the sentence, the object, the complement, the adverbial. Makes it a lot more specific, as well as line numbers, of course, to support your point. So PCS, phrase, clause, sentence. So just thinking of chunks, basically. Phrase is a little bit, a clause is a full SVO, basically. It can be independent or dependent, and then a sentence is a full thought in a sentence. So again, these are important to be really specific about what you're speaking about when you're writing about syntax. 2 S's, 3 C's. So 2 S's, 3 C's. Sentence fragment, simple sentence, compound sentence, complex, and compound complex. This one definitely you'll need to pause rather than me give a poor explanation of it. You want to be quite precise about these specific categories, because you definitely don't want to be misappropriating a sentence type for a sentence that it's not, as that would come across quite poorly. So make sure you're quite precise in these definitions, and so check the Orange Book to make sure you've got it in a way that you understand it. So this is from the discourse section, LAP, but it's also useful, of course, discourse means the whole text, but it's looking across sentences, so I feel like it's worthy to look at here, because the use of these acronyms is that you'll be analysing the syntactical elements of texts to really build up that skill and to get really strong in using this metalanguage specifically. So of course we've got listing, antithesis, and parallelism. Listing is what it sounds, dot points, or a series of commas breaking up different examples. Antithesis is the opposite, and parallelism is basically across two sentences where you do a similar thing. So you either do similar words or similar sequence or something like that, and it kind of makes a pair. So the good, the bad, the ugly, something like that, where you've sort of got a series of clauses that kind of are parallel, related to one another. All right, active voice, passive voice, agentless passive. So that's an L in the middle, in between the A and the P. Active voice, I kicked the dog. Passive voice, the dog was kicked by me. And agentless passive, the dog was kicked. So obviously you've taken the agent out of it. The person who did the thing is now missing in agentless passive. And this can be used to obfuscate, can be used to make things seem more formal. There's a whole range of purposes for it, but it's very common in formal political discourse especially. So we've got FFEFEW, which is front focus, end focus, and end weight. So again, this is from discourse, but as it occurs sort of within the sentence level, it's useful to talk about in a syntactic analysis. So front focus basically means the juicy part is at the start of the sentence. End focus means it's at the end. End weight is a principle. I don't necessarily think it's in the meta-language list, but it's basically in English. English is typically an end weight language. So that means typically the end of the sentence is the juicy part. If you even just think of the dog was kicked by me or something like that, the focus is the end bit kind of brings the punch. So to use front focus, fronting, or pre-posing is sort of usually used for effect, mostly to entertain, to draw attention to things, to emphasize. It sort of has a series of effects. Okay, I die is our 4-sentence types, 4-sentence classes, 4-sentence purposes are probably best. So we've got interrogative, declarative, imperative, exclamative. Interrogative, asking questions. Declarative, saying things. Imperative is giving an order. And exclamation is basically swearing, yelling, oh, kind of things that sort of explode out of the human being rather than things that you logically think about. So I'm going to stop talking, but this is your retrieval practice. The idea is as they pop up, your job is to try and think about what they stand for, to try and make the connection between nothing and your memory, that you're trying to strengthen the pathway between your brain and the memory of the meta-language we're using. So PCS from syntax, SPCA from syntax, 2 S's, 3 C's from syntax, LAP from discourse, AP, VP, ALP from syntax, FFEFEW from discourse, SVO from syntax, NECS from syntax, and I